Shalom, this is Nathaniel Banks, your online Bible study teacher. I'm going to be covering three passages of scripture today and talking a little bit about them as they relate to the Black community in particular. I'm starting with Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And it reads, "And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." Okay. Now that's Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 16. And now I'm going to read Matthew chapter 24, starting at, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but I'm going to start at verse 3. This is the passage where the disciples have just had a conversation with Jesus about how magnificent the temple was as they were in it. And Jesus told them that the time was coming in the very near future where not one stone was going to be left on top of another in that temple. And so they asked him a question starting at verse 3. "And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, and see that you be not troubled. For all these things have to come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom shall come against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake." That's Matthew chapter 24, verses 3 through 9. Now I'm going to jump down to verse 21. And it says, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Messiah, or there, don't believe it. For there shall arise false Christ or false messiahs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he's in the desert, don't go out there. Behold, he's in the secret places, don't go there. For as the lightning comes out of the east and shines unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." And then in verse 29, it says, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." So that's Matthew chapter 24. The last two verses I read were verses 27 through 30. And one other section, and then I'll put those all together. This is all about signs, okay? Revelation chapter 12, starting at verse 1, says, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven," or a great sign in heaven, "a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, a great dragon having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man child, who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared for of God, that they should feed her there 1,263 or 60 days. Now, what do all three of those passages have to do with where we are today? Genesis 1 tells us that God has put in the heavens signs for us to be able to tell the seasons that we're in. So when it says signs, that has to do with something pointing to something that's going to be happening. It says for signs, for days, and for years. It also has to do with the fact that there are seasons that we're in, and when we look at the heavens, we can see what those seasons are. So in Matthew 24, when Jesus was talking to his disciples, he told them that there was going to be a sign of the coming of the Son of Man in the heavens. For the most part, when we get to Revelation chapter 12, Revelation chapter 12 is talking about the first coming of Yeshua the Messiah, Jesus the Christ, his being born of a virgin. Okay. And if you remember, as soon as he was born, Herod tried to kill him. And so Herod was working on behalf of this dragon that we read about in Revelation 12. But then it said, but what Matthew 24 is telling us is we'll know when these things are happening, because the heavens are going to give us a sign. So the last few weeks, there have been several signs in heaven. Usually when the sun is mentioned and there are signs about the sun, it has to do with the Gentile nations and judgment, usually judgment coming upon the Gentile nations. When there are signs in the moon, that usually has to do with Israel, God's people. So what's all this got to do with the Black community? Well, there have been these two signs. One of them was the eclipse that everybody heard about. The next one is another sign coming up on the 23rd of September, which almost is verbatim what Revelation chapter 12 is talking about. So Revelation chapter 12, there is a sign coming up in the very near future. And again, what the sign says is there was going to be a woman clothed with the sun. The woman is a virgin, and that sign is actually in Virgo. And right above Virgo is Leo, the lion, the king. Okay, and so what that sign is saying is she's clothed with the sun, and the moon is at her feet, which is exactly what's going to be happening on the 23rd. And Jupiter has been coming down out of the womb of the Virgin, and that's going to be apparent also. So that sign is now being shown to us on the 23rd of September. And so the question for us is, so what do all these things mean? The sign itself has to do, whether you're talking about the eclipse or you're talking about the sign that's coming, it has to do with the Gentile nations, first of all. And the United States of America is a Gentile nation. And so we are in the time now where the nation is being judged, and there's going to be great tribulation. I'm not saying that this is the quote unquote great tribulation, but the signs are everything that's pointing to what is going on now has to do with trouble coming on the world. So we already know about the floods. We already know about the earthquake that happened right after the eclipse. There are 3, maybe 4 major hurricanes happening, all happening on this continent. Okay, and specifically, most of this happening with the United States of America. So it should cause us to ask the question: so what's going on? And asking, so where do we fit in with all of that? So one of the things is, it says that the sun is going to be darkened and the moon is not going to give her light. Okay, that is a sign that the judgment that's coming upon the nation of the United States of America is upon us now, actually. So we're in that time. Now, the United States of America is not necessarily a geographical location. It has more to do with the system that is in control of this country. And that's what's beginning to be revealed to God's people. And the reason why this is important for the Black community is because we keep asking, so what's our place in all of this, and where do we fit in? And what the culture of America has been telling us is that we don't fit in. We were brought here to do one thing, and that was to be free labor for this country. And now that the country does no longer needs that type of labor in a very real sense, we don't have any reason to be here. And so what the country is doing is telling us in no uncertain terms, you are not wanted here. Now, I know that's a hard message for us to understand, but that is the message that this system is giving to us. Okay. The blessing is, though, that even though the nation, this Gentile nation, is giving that message to us, God is giving us another message. And his other message is, I'm coming to put things back the way that they're supposed to be. America's great sin has nothing to do with homosexuality. It has nothing to do with aborting babies. America's great sin is how they have treated Black people in this country and have never repented of that. So what is happening here, Black people have been talking to anybody who will listen, why don't you treat us fairly? That's not in the cards for us in this country. The country was not configured to treat us fairly because we are supposed to be on the bottom. Okay. And as long as that system exists, that's where we are going to be. And we've made lots of contributions. Everybody understands that. We get credit for hardly any of them. And that's hard for us as a community to deal with. But what we have to understand is that that's by design. This is not something that just is by happenstance. That's how the country made its money. That's how the country became great. It became great off of the free labor of its citizens of African descent, or I would say the descendants of Judah. And that's a whole nother lesson that we can look at. But that sin is great, and it has never been repented of. It has never even been acknowledged. As a matter of fact, people brag about how they have treated poorly the Black community. And there's specific people who feel that way. So how does that play itself out? It plays itself in how we are the last hired and first fired. It plays itself out in the fact that there's a quote unquote achievement gap in the educational realm. It can be seen in how we are the least healthy people in the society, how socially the judicial system works so that Black people are punished for being Black and put in jail for offenses that the average community member, the average white community member, gets winked at or slapped on the wrist for. So when these things are happening, it just lets us know that we don't have a place here. And so one of the signs that is being given to our community is we need to start looking up. Okay, because that's where our redemption comes from. We cannot rely on people who have already chosen the place for us as a people in the society to bring us into a different place. Because if they were to do that, their place would be in jeopardy. They're never going to do that. And that's why we have to understand as a community why things are the way they are. But there is hope for our community in that if we look up and notice what these signs are saying, America is being judged as we speak for the things that she has done to us. She has not even admitted yet that the judgment that she's under is because of us. And so all of these other many signs, like for instance, the abortion issue or the gay rights issue and all of those other things that people in America say are the reason why America has to be judged. Those are just the symptoms. The problem is America has made its self on the backs of the Black community and is refusing to give the Black community what it needs in order to make itself whole. And so I'm going to stop the broadcast here, and then we'll pick up on that again, because there are certain things that our community needs to be thinking about and needs to be doing so that Jesus can make us whole. And that's what all of this is about. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Shalom to you and your household.